It's JJ Tabane, host of Power to Truth, making some time for me this morning. JJ, good to have you with us. I wanted to ask you this. This is why I wanted to ask you. Yesterday when we were there, I'm sure you were following it. I'm sure you saw the reaction. Every politician nearly making their way down to descended. That's the word. A lot of critics saying descended, vultures, some people calling politicians. Is that fair? Is that your assessment of what happened yesterday?
It seemed like a little bit of an overkill, because you had earlier on in the day the minister in the president. By the way, well done on the coverage and bringing us the updates there the whole day. So you had minister of the presidency coming there, and then later on the president himself, the premier, the mayor, in between things, MMC for public safety, MEC Maile. And I then saw some opposition politician, leader of the... Just a little bit of an overkill. If government were to descend like that on a problem, on a normal day, first of all, you would not have had that fire happen that way. Because if you look at what has happened there, the city was in full neglect, because Mashaba had been talking about this since 2016, about the hijacked buildings. So it's not a new problem. It's just that nobody had thought of doing anything about it up to now. You know, the province apparently actually put people there as a shelter. So the province was well aware of the state of that building. Because if you do a shelter where you are taking people away from danger, you don't put them in another danger, in another harm's way, you know. I'm not sure what the National Minister of Human Settlements I mean, how you would account for this kind of a horrific settlement of people, or the MEC for human settlements in Gauteng. So you got these politicians who descended there, but all of them are culpable of why we are in this mess. You know, and
the president was saying we're all to blame.
Like an electioneering.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's all electioneering, not all electioneering, but I think what happens now is that Africans see anything that a politician does as electioneering, JJ, because the polls are so close to next year as well. When the president says that we are all to blame, who's the we in this, do you think? Is that fair? Is he saying we as South Africa, we as society, or we as government, do you think?
No, he's right. They as government, because as society, I mean, why would we be to blame? We're not in charge of enforcing law and order. We simply are citizens who may be displaced. As you are correctly saying, these citizens are not going to those buildings for fun. They're going in there the same way that you've got shacks all over. I mean, that place looks exactly like an informal settlement. It just happened to be in the CBD. Just go to an informal settlement and look for a toilet, just to give you an illustration, or look for a fire break, or look for a fire extinguisher. That's why every winter we have a situation where shacks are raised to the ground, and you wonder, but this happens every year. I mean, 400 people get, their houses destroyed. Others die in these fires or floods, etc. And nobody seems to be able to intervene decisively from a human settlement point of view to say, these are time bombs waiting to go off. You just talking now about buildings next door. They built 2 buildings next door to the one that is banned, could go up in flames tomorrow.
Absolutely.
And in all what these politicians are saying, I'm not hearing anybody saying, let's intervene in the immediate vicinity of this building to make sure that we don't get the same tragedy. So the president is right that all of government, all of the layers of government, whether it be national, provincial, or local, are to blame. Maybe not equally to blame, but to blame, because that kind of intergovernmental cooperation that we saw yesterday with them descending there to come and say sorry is what we needed for them to do, to make sure they don't have to say sorry about 74 people dying.
Yeah, and the worst of it, I mean, there isn't a worst of this. I keep saying the worst of this. There's no worst of this. It's all worse. It's all terrible. JJ is the 12 children who lost their lives as well. But I want to ask you this, as I say goodbye to you. It is shocking. I think we could use stronger language, but it's a television show. You and I can't do that just yet. But your show next week, I don't doubt there's going to be a lot of focus on this. What are you looking for
Absolutely.
in this story? What's the number one thing you're going to be going after on Power to Truth next week? Just as I say goodbye to you, JJ.
I want to be able to put somebody's neck on the block about how they are avoiding this happening, to start with, in the next door building. Before we talk about the 60 or 70 or some even say 600 either occupied or hijacked buildings in the city. Are they going to do something just next door to that building to avoid this thing happening? Because the visuals you just shown me are horrific by any standard. And I listened to the MMC of Public Safety this morning, which I got a little bit of encouragement when he was saying what needs to be done. Instead of SERI going to court to stop them evicting people, actually SERI should have taken them to court to make sure that they do their jobs in making those buildings safe at the minimum, before we talk about relocating them to proper building, etc. Secondly, he says that the people who are sitting in those buildings, half of them actually can afford to pay rent. They just don't have stock, or what they call rental stock, to be directed to. And if they did an audit, they could release half of those people to be in proper Josco-owned properties or rental stock. So I think that's a beginning of solutions, because you can blame each other for all you need, and of course we need to somebody must take responsibility for this. But for going forward, you want to avoid that tragedy happening again, and so you need a plan. So that's really what we need to be holding these politicians' feet to the fire over.